The hospital room was too quiet for what was about to happen. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, sterile and cold. My wrist had the IV taped neatly, and I could smell the faint sting of disinfectant. My son-in-law, Ethan, stood at the foot of my bed, his smile polite, but his eyes restless, darting toward the door every few seconds. When the doctor came in, Ethan slipped something into his palm. I saw the quick exchange, money folded twice, hidden like a secret. My heart began to thump in slow, heavy beats. The doctor nodded once, reached for a new syringe, and whispered, "This will help you sleep." But something inside me screamed, "No." I caught his wrist before the needle touched my skin. "What did he pay you for?" I asked quietly. The room froze. Ethan's smile vanished. He leaned in, voice trembling with fake calm. "You don't want to do this, Mom." I looked at him, my daughter's husband, the man I had welcomed into our family, and whispered, "They thought this would break me." But they had no idea what was coming. People always said I had a peaceful life. A small house with a vegetable garden, a quiet retirement, and a daughter who visited every weekend. That was enough for me. After my husband passed, I learned to find comfort in simple things. The smell of rain on soil, my morning tea, the sound of birds arguing in the banyan tree outside. My daughter Lila was my pride. Smart, kind, and loyal to a fault. When she married Ethan, I thought she'd found someone who would cherish her as much as her father once cherished me. He was charming back then, brought flowers, carried my groceries, and called me Mom from the first week. But charm fades when it's only painted on. The first time I saw his temper was subtle. Lila had cooked biryani for dinner, but Ethan said he wanted steak instead. When I told him gently that we didn't waste food in this house, he laughed in that hollow way men laugh when they feel small. He didn't argue, but he never forgot. I should have noticed the way he started taking little things, my pension check by mistake, a piece of gold jewelry, for Lila to wear. When I asked about them, he'd smile and say, "You're getting forgetful, Mom." It's okay. It wasn't forgetfulness. It was gaslighting. Soon, he began controlling Lila too. Every decision went through him, what she wore, where she went, even how often she visited me. He said it was for her safety, but his care looked more like a leash. Still, I tried to keep peace. I made excuses for him, even when my neighbors whispered that he was seen with other women. I told myself marriages were complicated, that I shouldn't interfere. Then came the inheritance talk. My husband had left a small property in my name, a piece of land just outside the city. Ethan brought it up casually one evening. "Mom," he said, "you're not getting younger. Maybe it's time to transfer that land to Lila." For convenience, I smiled and said, "Convenience can wait until I'm buried." He laughed, but his eyes didn't. From that day on, I could feel his patience thinning, like a rope slowly fraying under strain. He began visiting me alone, always pretending it was to check on my health. He'd bring gifts, fruits, medicine, even a new phone, and ask me to trust him with small things. I trusted no one. One evening, I found a letter from my doctor about a follow-up visit I hadn't scheduled. When I called the clinic, they said Ethan had spoken to them on my behalf, told them I was having memory problems. That night, I barely slept. I lay awake, listening to the ceiling fan creak, realizing he was preparing a narrative, the old, confused mother-in-law who couldn't be trusted with her own affairs. A week later, he convinced Lila I needed a checkup. He drove me himself. The same hospital. The same doctor who later stood by my bed with a syringe. At the time, I thought it was harmless. A blood test, maybe. But as the elevator doors closed behind us, Ethan placed a hand on my shoulder and said softly, "You've lived a good life, Mom. Maybe it's time to rest." Something cold slipped down my spine. I forced a smile, clutching my purse tighter. Inside was my late husband's photo, and a small flash drive I'd been updating for months, just in case. He thought I was old, weak, naive. But I wasn't just someone's mother. I was someone's widow. And widows learn to survive. After that hospital visit, everything changed. Quietly, subtly, like a sickness that spreads before you realize you're infected. Ethan began crafting a story, one I didn't even know I was starring in. To the neighbors, I became the poor old woman losing her memory. To my daughter, I was paranoid. And to the doctor, apparently, I was declining fast. He made sure everyone believed it. When I called the clinic to ask about my records, the nurse sounded confused. "Your son-in-law said he's handling everything now, Mrs. Rahim." My heart clenched. He was rewriting my identity while I was still breathing. At first, I tried to reason with Lila. "He's hiding things from you," I said one afternoon as she visited. But she only sighed, rubbing her temples. "Mom, you've been so stressed lately. Ethan's just trying to help." Help. That word had started to sound like a threat. The isolation began soon after. Lila's visits grew shorter, her tone tighter. My phone would ring once, then stop. Ethan always answered first, claiming she was busy. Friends who used to stop by now crossed the street when they saw me. I didn't understand how fast rumors travel until they carried my name. One day, Mrs. Kamal from next door caught me sweeping the porch. "You shouldn't be out alone," she said softly. "Your son-in-law told us you wander off sometimes." Wander off. I hadn't left my street in weeks. The humiliation stung deeper than any insult. It wasn't just that he wanted my land. It was that he wanted my credibility gone before he took it. Still, I refused to crumble. Every night, I sat at my kitchen table, writing down dates, times, conversations, every detail that could prove I was sane. My flash drive became my silent witness. But the stress took its toll. Sleep turned to shallow, broken naps. I'd wake with my heart racing, drenched in sweat, convinced I heard whispers in the next room. The shadows felt longer, the air heavier. Then, one afternoon, help arrived from an unexpected place. I was at the pharmacy picking up my medication when a young woman behind the counter frowned. "Mrs. Rahim? You didn't refill these last month, but your son-in-law already collected them." My skin went cold. "He what?" She nodded, puzzled. "Said you were too unwell to come yourself." That's when I met Nadia, the pharmacist's assistant. Sharp eyes, quick mind, heart still uncorrupted by fear. When she saw my hands shaking, she came around the counter. "If something's wrong, you can tell me." Something inside me cracked open. For the first time in months, I told the truth. About the inheritance, the fake checkups, the rumors. Nadia listened quietly, then said, "You need to document everything. I can help." That night, she taught me how to upload my notes to cloud storage, how to record conversations discreetly. It felt strange, becoming a spy in my own life. But fear can either paralyze you or make you evolve. I chose the latter. A week later, Ethan visited again. He smiled like nothing had changed, bringing a basket of fruit. "Just checking on you, Mom." I smiled back, phone recording quietly in my lap. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "It would be better for everyone if you signed the land over now. You'll still have your house. I'm just protecting Lila's future." I met his eyes. "And what about mine?" He chuckled, standing up. "You've had your turn." When he left, I replayed the recording, every syllable clear. Proof. For the first time, I didn't feel afraid. I felt alive. I sent the file to Nadia. Her reply came within minutes. "Keep everything safe. They'll come harder now. Be ready." And she was right. The next morning, 2 police officers arrived at my door with a wellness check. "Ma'am," one said, "we've had reports you're a danger to yourself." I looked past them at the car parked down the street. Ethan's car. He waved at me with that same smug smile he wore at the hospital. The wellness check was just the beginning. After the officers left, I sat on the couch staring at the empty doorway, listening to the sound of my own heartbeat echoing in my ears. Ethan had crossed a line, one I couldn't ignore anymore. 2 days later, a letter arrived. Notice of medical evaluation. According to it, my primary doctor had recommended psychological assessment due to signs of cognitive decline. My hands trembled as I read. The doctor's signature was there, but I remembered the exchange of money at the hospital, the folded cash, the uneasy glance. It wasn't a recommendation. It was a trap. Ethan wasn't just trying to steal my property anymore. He wanted to erase me legally, to declare me incompetent so he could take control of everything I owned. I felt my chest tighten, my breath shallow. For the first time, I realized how close I'd come to being injected with whatever he'd arranged that day. I could have been gone already, buried under pity and paperwork. But widows learn to fight differently. That night, I called Nadia. "He's moving faster," I said. "If I don't act now, he'll win." Her voice was steady. Then we moved faster, too. She introduced me to her cousin, Arif, a young lawyer who handled elder rights cases. We met at his small office behind a printing shop. He listened quietly as I told my story, from the inheritance pressure to the fake appointments to the attempted injection. When I finished, he leaned forward. "Do you have proof?" I opened my purse and slid the flash drive across the table, enough to make him choke. Arif smiled slightly. "Then it's time he learns what happens when people underestimate mothers." He helped me file a statement, carefully, quietly. We gathered records, fake prescriptions, unauthorized calls to my doctor, even the recording of Ethan demanding I sign over the land. Each file became another nail in his coffin. But Ethan didn't slow down. If anything, he became bolder. He and Lila hosted a family meeting one Sunday. When I arrived, half the relatives were already there, whispering, eyes full of sympathy I didn't ask for. Lila stood beside Ethan, pale and tense. "Mom," she began softly, "Ethan just wants what's best for you. You need care, professional care." I felt the air grow heavier. Ethan placed a folder on the table. "We've arranged for a caretaker and, if needed, a short stay at a private facility." A facility, that word hit like a slap. I opened the folder and saw my name on forged forms. Medical authorization, consent for guardianship, my signature traced in perfect imitation. "You forged my name," I said, voice low, calm. Ethan's jaw flexed. "Mom, you're confused." "No," I said, pushing the folder toward him. "But you're about to be." I pulled out my phone and pressed play. His voice filled the room, calm, calculated. "It would be better for everyone if you signed the land over now. You've had your turn." Gasps rippled around the table. Lila turned to him, eyes wide, face drained of color. "Ethan! What is that?" He stood up sharply. "She's twisting my words." But it was too late. I stood, gathering my shawl. "You wanted control. You wanted my silence. You're getting neither." When I reached the door, I paused and looked back at him. They thought they still had control. I whispered to myself. They didn't. That night, I sent Arif the recordings from the meeting. He advised patience. "We'll let him think he's still winning," he said. "Then we'll strike." And so we waited. Ethan tried one last desperate move. He called my doctor again. This time, Arif intercepted through official notice. The hospital launched an internal review, and within days, the doctor resigned for personal reasons. The game had shifted. The hunter had become the hunted. Still, I knew Ethan wouldn't go down quietly. Men like him never do. He started spreading new rumors, that I was faking illness to get sympathy, that I had poisoned my husband years ago for the inheritance. The lies spread like oil on water. But this time, I wasn't alone. Nadia and Arif stood by me. Evidence was ready. Witnesses prepared. The storm he built was about to turn on him. The days that followed were like walking through smoke. every breath heavy with tension, every step uncertain. Ethan's smile had vanished from the neighborhood. Now he lurked behind whispers and phone calls. The rumors began small, like sparks. "She's losing her mind," someone told my old friend at the market. "She's trying to sue her own family," another claimed at the mosque. Within a week, people I'd known for decades looked at me differently, pity in their eyes, suspicion in their tone. But I no longer reacted. I let Ethan build his fire, because this time I was holding the water. Every morning I documented his lies. Every evening I forwarded the evidence to Arif. Nadia taught me to back up everything in multiple places. I even bought a second phone, one Ethan didn't know existed. The piggy bank I once kept for emergency cash was now full of small USB drives, labeled with dates. That little porcelain jar had become my arsenal. Ethan, meanwhile, began to crack under the pressure of his own schemes. He visited again, eyes bloodshot, voice sharp. "You've embarrassed this family," he hissed. "People are talking." I looked up from my tea. "Let them." He slammed his fist on the table, making the cups rattle. "I'll ruin you if I have to." I smiled softly. "You already tried." He stormed out, slamming the door so hard it echoed through the house. I watched his car peel away, knowing the next move would be desperate, and it was. 2 nights later, my front gate creaked open. I peeked from the window and saw him in the garden with a flashlight, searching for something near the flower bed. I recorded it. Every step, every whisper. The next morning, I found what he'd planted. A small plastic bag half buried near the rose bush. Inside was a bottle of pills and a note written to look like my handwriting. A fake suicide attempt. He wanted me institutionalized, gone, erased, declared unstable. I called Arif immediately. "He's accelerating," I said. Arif arrived within the hour, gloved hands carefully placing the bag into an evidence folder. "He's losing control." That's good. The word felt strange, but it was true. Villains crumble fastest when they realize their masks are slipping. Over the next week, Arif filed for a restraining order. The police questioned Ethan. He denied everything, of course, calling me a confused old woman with delusions. But this time, it wasn't his word against mine. We had recordings, text messages, even witness statements from Nadia and the pharmacist who confirmed the stolen medication refills. Piece by piece, his empire of lies began to rot from within. Still, he wasn't done. He started manipulating Lila more aggressively, twisting her emotions. "Your mother's trying to destroy us," he told her. "She wants to see me in jail." Lila stopped visiting altogether. That hurt more than I expected. The silence from her side was like a constant ache beneath my ribs. One night, I found myself staring at her wedding photo on the shelf. The one where Ethan's arm wrapped around her waist, his smile radiant, mine proud. I touched the frame and whispered, "I'm not fighting to hurt you, Lila. I'm fighting to save you from him." The next morning, Arif called. "It's time," he said. "The hearing is scheduled." The day of reckoning. I looked around my living room, at the walls that had witnessed every betrayal, at the piggy bank that now held justice in miniature form. I felt no fear, only clarity. That evening, I ironed my white shawl, the one my husband used to say made me look untouchable. I packed my documents neatly into a folder. When I looked into the mirror before bed, the woman staring back wasn't weak, or old, or broken. She was calm, unshakable, ready. As I turned off the light, the phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You won't win, Mom. Tomorrow changes everything." I smiled in the dark. "Yes," I whispered. "It does." The courthouse smelled of paper and polish, a place where truth and lies wrestled under cold light. I sat in the front row, shawl neat, folder steady on my lap. Across the room, Ethan stood beside his lawyer, wearing that same smug smile he'd worn the day he tried to have me injected. Case 1427, Rahim versus Rahim, the clerk called. Guardianship. The word made my heart steady. Today wasn't about proving my sanity. It was about exposing his greed. Ethan's lawyer spoke first, smooth and rehearsed. My client only seeks to protect his mother-in-law. Her confusion. Enough, I said softly when my turn came. He bribed my doctor. He forged my signature. And he's been recording me, not to protect me, but to destroy me. Arif, my lawyer, placed a USB before the judge. Ethan's voice filled the room. Once this is done, she'll be declared unstable. Gasps. Silence. Then my daughter stood, tears trembling. Ethan, is it true? He couldn't answer. The judge struck the gavel. Petition dismissed, referred for investigation. As I rose, I looked at Ethan one last time. I don't want apologies, I said. I want change. Outside, the sun felt new again, and so did I. Condensed resolution, still standing. It's strange how quiet the world feels when chaos finally ends. For months, every knock and phone call felt like dread. But now, even silence feels lighter. A week after the hearing, I sat in my garden. The roses had begun to bloom again, their petals trembling in the wind. The air smelled of wet soil and victory. Ethan's lies unraveled fast. The forged papers, the bribed doctor, the recordings. The doctor confessed. Ethan didn't. He just stared as the police took him away, realizing too late that betrayal always circles back. When Lila came home, she whispered, "I'm sorry, Mom." I didn't see it. "You see it now," I told her. That's enough. I kept the old piggy bank that once hid my evidence, now cracked but proud, a symbol of quiet strength. Inside, I placed a note. Truth has patience. The garden became my peace. The land he wanted became my freedom. Justice didn't need an audience. I just needed to breathe again. As the rain began to fall, I whispered to the memory of my husband. We won, quietly, but completely. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, if you've ever felt powerless, watching the truth drown beneath charm and lies, remember this. Patience is louder than revenge. The people who plot in shadows always forget that time exposes everything. Ethan thought he could silence me with fear, but silence is where I found my strength. To anyone listening, don't rush to prove your innocence. Just gather your truth. Let it grow roots, and when the moment comes, let it bloom so loudly that no one can ever bury it again. Because sometimes survival isn't quiet. It's the sound of peace after the storm. If this story moved you, share it. Someone out there might need to hear it today.